Hello, everyone, and welcome to Face Off. We're in the middle of October here, and of course, we just launched the Bakasura remodel. You went through a very long and very exciting process of analyzing the European scene and how they handle the map control. But in Face Off, we like to talk about everything here. But first off, my name is Drybear. I'm joined today by Senior F. How you doing, man?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic today, man. Got a lot of stuff to talk about.
We do.
I guess today we're going to start off with the tiebreakers.
The tiebreakers, that's right. So in Europe, we had two teams, Mortality and Team Solo, made a tie at the score of 12-8 over the 20 games, and their head-to-head was dead even. And so they had to play a match to see who would actually get second and who would get third.
Yeah, I mean, this is the stuff that really excites me, Drybear. It shows that a lot of stuff as the season goes on, it shows individuals and how it really works out. The skill of each team are just evenly matched. It shows that we have a really solid lineup as far as our entire SPL is concerned. And, the tiebreakers came out and one team had to win.
Well, I think looking at it is, you saw TSM come out strong. So TSM started that match against Mortality, about 2,000 gold in the lead, and we saw a very slow, progressive downfall of TSM against Mortality. What Mortality does best is they always have their eye on the prize. And so going into the match, we saw Cubo Fred pick up Bumba's Mask and Thanatos for his team, which already puts a ticking time bomb on the team. Like, you have to close this out early. Right. What we saw a little bit of is the fact that TSM, when they started getting into it, they actually started rotating slowly. They weren't there in position. They didn't have the map control. They didn't have the focus to be able to say, this is our gold theory. In fact, TSM did not get a single gold theory that entire match.
Right. And you mentioned the Bumba's Thanatos, and there is something there, Drybear. There is a thought process.
Yeah, there's a Bumba's and a Thanatos.
But I mean, a lot of players see that, and they associate Thanatos with just Death Toll. There is a method to the madness. The idea is Bumba's Mask, you can share gold. It actually gives you 147% more gold by sharing those camps. So it's a big deal, but you have to actually share the camps. And that's the key point. You mentioned the TSM wasn't rotating efficiently, right, and we didn't get to see that. And the big thing was Mortality. Their ringer actually came out to play. Sayo, who normally slides, he showed up to play.
He really did. So Sayo kind of shut off there. Now, one thing that's important to note about that match is Sayo actually died first. He was the first one to die in that match, and so he got hit by first blood. And, honestly, it was just a solo kill. We saw Game Hunter take him down in a 1-versus-1. But really what happened after that is once Sayo got his chin size online, and this is one of my favorite moments in that match, is Sayo came back from the base of the chin size and saw Game Hunter and just beeline. Yep. He was just like, you, tonight, and just ran at him and just started beating on him. And Game Hunter's like, oh, he's just harassing me. Oh, he's kind of committing. Ow, it hurts a lot. Well, stop, ow. And then he was just dead. And that's the whole point, is that, he was playing for that mid and late game transition, which Sayo played perfectly and was able to pick up that late game damage. And the whole point is that, we saw Trickstank get caught out in front of an objective right before. In fact, I think 2 or 3 times that match, Trickstank ended up dying right before an objective started. Yeah. And so they couldn't get any gold furies. They couldn't get any fire giants. They just started falling apart.
And that's by design, of course. Mortality definitely sought out the tank. They sought out that target of Trickstank. They know that their objectives. We sort of covered that earlier today. Cret and Brandon went through a lot of the individual plays. And you can see that in Mortality's game style, and that definitely showed through in the tiebreakers. They targeted Trickstank. They made a conscious effort to take out the Guardian, since he's the one primarily with the Hog 3. And they went out and they took the objectives because of it.
Well, I think looking at it as well is that, if you're going to look at one person in this match, I think the one person you have to look at is Moex. Moex playing Freya that game, played fantastically all the way through, and he really showed what a hunter can do regardless of what they're playing that Freya. And so the major damage coming out of that is something that, honestly, any team can feel, because Moex was just on point that match. But, thinking about tiebreakers, I think we have to hop over North America. We've had a lot of Europe today. Let's look at what North America really brought to the scene here. So we saw one tiebreaker in North America. And just to reiterate, because I know we had a lot of questions about this, Cloud9 had a tiebreaker with SK in the 4th and 5th, but because their head-to-head was 3-1 and Cloud9 was ahead in that, they didn't play tiebreakers, just to clear that up. But going to North America, Dig versus Snipe. Now, let's break it down first here, F. Dig versus Cog Prime that day. How did it go?
Dig did not play well against Cog Prime. Dig had a little bit of problems against Cog Prime. Just interesting play styles coming out, interesting decision making, I guess I would say, coming out from the boys on Dig. A lot of aggressive plays that didn't exactly pan out, and just sort of you could see the players questioning themselves, honestly. So
you really could. I mean, looking at Cog, I think the biggest thing is that Last was kind of falling short. Now, in that match, Last was 2nd and 3rd blood. In fact, Last was 3 out of the first 5 deaths in that game for his team, and it was a lot of slow rotations. And when you're looking at the match against calling your prime, Anitz are playing Kali. We saw Vamana in that match with Omega, and we're looking at a lot of late game potential. Barracuda playing one of his favorite characters, Apollo, as well. You can't let that late game come to the forefront. So we saw by the time Dignitas got their first kill, which was on Annister when he used that nimble strike a little bit prematurely, it came to the point where it's like you got a kill, but it's 14 minutes into the match, and Annister's 3-0-4. Right. Omega's 1-0-1 with a lot of gold from the soul lane, and you're looking at a point where it's like you got really slow game up against a late game hyper carry team. You can't really play a slow early game.
Yeah, it's just a little too much at a certain point. You get too many characters too far ahead, and sometimes it's just unrecoverable. And that was exactly the story with Cog Prime. And Snipe really wasn't too different, Drybear.
Yeah, hopping into the match after that, of course, was the tiebreaker because Snipe and Dignitas tied for third and fourth. They're looking at who's going to take that slot because their head-to-head was equal and they were playing at the same level. So you're looking at the match with Snipe and you're thinking, what can we do to shut down Dignitas to get this slot? So Snipe was looking at saying, let's ban Lassus. They banned Thor, they banned Bastet, and they banned Serket.
Completely.
3 of the best junglers in the game, 3 of Lassus' best characters, and said, hey, you're going to get shut down. So that leaves a lot of things on the table. Leaves Hun Bots on the table. Leaves Najah, one of Lassus' favorites, on the table. Ended up going Thanatos there.
Yeah. Thanatos is a very niche character. Thanatos succeeds very well in the beginning. He succeeds very well in the beginning stages of the game. He's one of the most aggressive designed characters for the beginning stage. Mid game, he doesn't really have a purpose, and then late game, he exists solely to take care of the tankier characters. And that comp didn't really have the tankier characters that he really needs to target in the late game. In the early game, we just didn't see any aggression.
Well, I think the thing about that match is that, we saw a lot of disarray in Dignitas. It's something they really have to kind of boot camp about when they go forward. Because, look at this team, you're thinking, is this really a regional championship team, or is this, a wildcard team? Because you're looking at saying Dignitas had one of the longest win streaks in SPL. They have some of the highest statistics in the SPL, and definitely hit a high note when you see them play. But this last 2 matches, the last day of SPL, really did not, represent that in any way. We saw Nada in the mid lane twice without a single ward placed next to him. So he had no vision coverage, no advantage on his side. Same thing for Zetman. Zetman ended up going for a lot of kills and ended up getting himself caught. And I think the theme of that match, Snipe vs. Dig, was Zetman greed, is really what it was. Yeah. I mean, we saw him go up in the air and carefully placing, he was playing Rom, carefully placing that Astral Barrage, trying to get the kill when he was, becoming surrounded by Snipe. And the longer you spend at the air, the longer you're at a point where you can't get out.
But something we've talked a lot about the missteps that Dig has made along the way, but Snipe definitely played fantastic.
He did.
Specifically, I want to personally highlight Allied. Allied's play was outlandish, just took every opportunity. As we said,
this isn't just so he'll notice you, right?
Oh, of course. Senpai, please. But Dig made a couple of missteps, and Snipe is a team that you can't really do that too often for. They're number 3 seed, and that's not by accident. That happens because of a reason, and one thing that they really succeed at is grabbing that and taking it to the next level, as we said. Taking a look at some other things that we have going on. Moving forward, what are we looking towards to the future of Smite?
Well, we are now complete with the SPL, done, and everything is closed out. We're looking at the wildcards this weekend, so Saturday and Sunday this weekend will be the wildcard event, which is going to feature the bottom 2 of the SPL and the top 2 of the Challenger Cup for both regions. Now, moving forward, you really want to look at to see if teams can start to kind of innovate in an intelligent way. Not just, I want to play this comp. It's more like, what do we counter this in the meta right now? What's in the meta right now? Well, Raw. Raw is in the meta right now. And so do we see a lot more Raw bans? Because what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of Geb bans. We're seeing a lot of Assassin bans in the jungle, and Serket, Loki, Mercury, Freya. We're seeing a lot of bans towards the jungle and the support, but not enough towards the solo lane and the mid lane. So Raw, with healing anywhere from 15 to 30,000 every single game, damage that matches most mages throughout the match of the game as well, and also keeps teams alive during sieges and major pushes. Do they look to shut down Ra?
I think that Ra's a situation where he's an extremely potent god. Everything you said definitely was true, but I think you can handle that in game. There's a number of items, there's a number of playstyles, a number of gods that can handle Ra as long as you actually handle Ra. Too many teams just let him sit in the solo lane or even the middle lane and allow him to get farmed up, don't harass him too much, and that's what happens poorly. You watch the teams that take care of him, get a couple of ganks onto that solo lane, and Ra, while still potent, you can take care of him. play Osiris.
There's a lot of anti-healing in the game. Serket, Osiris, Sobek, Chang'e, that kind of thing. And so we're going to see something that's interesting. We're going to see people start to pick up New Wa and get that Divine Ruin, which is one of my favorite things. It's the intravenous delivery of Divine Ruin. Just get Divine Ruin on New Wa, ult, and then 5 members of the enemy team all have 8 seconds of 40% reduced healing. And it seems to be working against Ra. It seems to be a pretty significant strategy. Now, the next thing that seems to be happening, and really only in the last weekend of SPL, Kali.
Kali has been exciting lately, and I think that's more a reflection of the individual players than the god itself. Kali got a very, very small numbers buff, just enough for players to try her out in ranked. And you take a look at the players that are playing her, like Zero Gars or Dagars and players like that. They're players that enjoy the hyper carry and, frankly, can get away with it. You play a character like Kali, and it's sets you up for an interesting situation if you don't play everything almost perfectly. So I think it's something that's going to be popular until maybe just people get over her. It's the ebb and flow of character choices.
Well, it seems like we're getting more and more of these characters that don't really have that much influence early game,
right,
but become more to the mid and late game, which is interesting to me because Hunbots fits that role, right, where he doesn't really have the biggest influence, levels 1 through 5, levels 1 through 6. He can throw in the ultimate every now and then and really get in there and do a lot of damage, but he's not like the I'm committing and killing you kind of character. And then his mid and late game is awesome. And so he would fit that kind of Kali style where it's like, I'm not going to be doing much early unless it's really fed to me on a silver platter, but I'm looking for that mid and late game transition where I'm very strong and my opponents are not. Other things we're seeing as well, we're going to see things like Vulcan as a hunter, things like Freya coming out as a hunter, Kronos coming out as a hunter. Things really kind of spurring up here. So what are your thoughts?
So Freya as a hunter, it's been done. I love it as long as you have a tower killer in the rest of the comp. Freya is not a great choice when it comes to killing towers. No. So you have to have either a Mercury or somebody like that. Kali, somebody that can kill towers efficiently, either in the jungle, soul lane. I mean, even in the mid lane, get creative. But if you're going to do the Freya hunter, make sure you have the rest of the comp in mind. Kronos is a hunter I really like. Kronos, his ability to kill towers because of the way he double dips into both magical stuff. You buy an obsidian shard, all of a sudden the protections on towers are basically gone. I would like to see a race between killing a tower between him and Bakasura. Vulcan, let's move on.
Well,
I don't think Vulcan Hunter. It's something that Snoopy plays a lot. He's good at it. It's more about just having a Vulcan in that lane and less about having a Vulcan ADC.
Well, Vulcan's been weird regardless of what role he plays, right? I mean, he's just been a different person, kind of like I was just. And then we're going to see, him play in the mid lane, so in the solo lane. We've seen him in the jungle occasionally, about 6 months ago. And so him kind of coming to the scene is really interesting because he's very variant. He's probably one of the most variable characters we have in the match right now where, he could be awesome, he could be so-so, or it could be awful. Either way, it really comes down to what the matchup is. But, talking about Kronos a little bit, I like him because he outranges a lot of hunters. The stop time has a very long range, similar to Aphrodite's Lovebirds, where you can throw it out clearly at a safe distance. You also have the rewind, which is great against Hunter 1v1. But I think that as far as all roles to be innovative with, I think Hunter's probably the one I would innovate the least on because Hunters are very stable. There's tons of great Hunters in the game currently, and they do have a very wide, versatile kit from which they can pull from to do tons of things. But, the one thing I do want to talk about, speaking of other roles that we're innovating on, Kabrakan, Destroyer of Mountains. This god has been buffed about 3 times before he made it to competitive play. We haven't seen him. What's the deal there?
Kabrakan is a character that a lot of players have been playing with in the ranked scene right now. You see Divio specifically really bringing him out in the solo lane. A number of players have tried him in the jungle. I know Laz has really been flexing his muscles there. And the recent buff to the attack speed after the one ability, it opens up a lot of doors that might not be able to be walked through, but ranked is the perfect place to try this out for the professional players. And watching a couple of streams, Divios has actually had a lot of success. Kabrakan is a character that his main problem is that he puts too many DRs. There's too many diminishing returns involved in his entire kit for it to really be thought of as a guardian. But if your idea is not to really stun and CC and instead deliver damage and control an environment with Rampage? What is
He's just scary, man.
And I mean, in the beginning of the game, Dry Bear, before people have boots, you're not getting out of that.
Have you seen the Cabrakan mid or Cabrakan solo?
Yeah, you're not getting out of that 3. It's
Oh man, the damage is
Not a chance.
crazy. And you can see even Cabrakan's picking up, and he does kind of like, it seems like the way he is. You're exactly right. I mean, he does hit that DR threshold. For those of you who don't know, DR goes from 100% to 66% to 33% of the duration of the CC, and that diminishing return lasts about 10 seconds or so before it falls off. So it's a long duration before you're getting full CC effects coming out. And so hitting that multiple times down to a third of the duration of CC, that's rough. But he's got a lot of damage output. So if you see, Cabrakan's going more the way of Old Emir, where they pick up, Chronos Pendant, Voidstone early on, they can dish out a lot of damage while also having a lot of control. The major downside with that is that, it's kind of conflicting with his kit, right? He wants to be in there smashing the ground like a derp and just going crazy, but at the same time, if he's not tanky, he can't do that because they'll just focus you. I mean, time and time again, we see Hades and Amir channeling their ultimate, and even Kukulkan, Khan, you're just like, hey, Dragon Friend, that's the guy. Just kill him right now.
The main reason, in my opinion, Hades just isn't played.
That's right.
Because you just set yourself up for failure by standing still.
Yeah.
Hades, Anubis all suffer the same thing, and Cabrakan, just another one of them. So you have to get creative. You have to use those abilities differently, and if anybody can be creative, I think Divios and Lazarus leading the charge can definitely get something done with Cabrakan.
Well, something creative that we've seen so far is the itemization they were building up. When we were looking at Ichval Tier 1, we saw that happen earlier, where we saw Ichval 1, and then he bought 3 items afterwards, and then finished a little bit later. We've seen Kali in the Soul End with Odysseus Bow. We've seen a couple new items. I mean, there have been a lot of items added that haven't picked up yet, and they're just now being, tested and battle hardened. What's the deal there?
Well, I mean, nobody really wants to mess with new stuff during the SPL. We had a couple of different versions, and the biggest deal, I mean, even beyond that, is just we know it works. We know what we can win with. We've practiced this with this stuff for weeks. Here's a new item. It might be really good, but I'm not going to gamble when my season's on the line.
That's right.
So now that it's over, we're moving on to relegations. We're going to see them play we'll move to some teams that maybe have less experience than us. Maybe it's time for us to experiment. We have an off week. Maybe it's time for us to try this out in ranked, in scrims, and that's what we're going to see. So expect to see some of the newer items, some of the newer strategies, etc. come relegations.
Well, speaking of off week, the top 4 teams in the Smite Pro League that have finished at the end will have it looks like 4 weeks off entirely. But the bottom 2 and the top 2 of the Challenger will not have a week off. In fact, we're going directly into the wildcards this weekend, starting this Saturday for NA and this Sunday for EU. The setup for that will be each team in the wildcard will have a 2-week stretch where they play each other team twice. So there's going to be a lot of matches between teams and a lot of repeat matches between teams. So the whole idea here is, who are we going to see coming out of the relegations? Let's start with North America.
Right. So in North America, we have a very interesting Challenger Cups scene. We have 5 angry men with some familiar faces, familiar names. We have the Best and Mace of the Face of Dignitas and Denial, respectively. They've sort of put together their team. Pain to Beyond played for them once or twice, whether or not it was allowed, but he actually did. So a number of familiar faces on that team had a lot of trouble. They only really escaped semifinals a handful of times, wound up making it to be 2nd seed, so there's someone to watch out for. And Rambozos is the number 1 seed overall. They are a little more practiced, a little more tried and true. You have the previous Dig Aduro on that team. We got to kill that joke sometime. It's got to be over.
You just perpetuated it, by the way.
The Rambozos Aduro is on that team, along with a number of last year's sort of above-ranked players. A lot of talented players that haven't quite reached the SPL level, but with this extra practice and a lot of time, they might show something off to the bottom SPL teams.
Right, well, we're also looking at the bottom of the SPL teams for North America. So we've got Thirst and Fat Chunks Assemble coming out. Now, Thirst has had a very troubled time keeping a standard roster throughout the whole history of the SPL. Something we were talking about the other day. The Thirst has actually run 7 different people in the Hunter role throughout the course of the season. Now, of course, Fusion OP played it once. They tried it out, kind of thing. It seemed like the whole season was them trying to try it out. So they haven't really been able to maintain a single roster. And we do know there's a lot of talent on that team. We've seen Wolfie go off. We've seen a lot of strong play. But speaking of strong play, Chunks is looking better and better as the SPL went on. We saw the last 2 weeks of SPL where Chunks just started getting victory after victory. What do these wildcard teams in North America have to do to get the victory?
Well, when it comes to Chunks, I think it's a little more ambiguous for the wild card opponents. The Chunks are obviously the team that can do a number of different strategies. They can bring a number of different things to the table. What these wild card teams need to focus on, though, is Auror. Auror comes out to play and almost plays sort of like a ranked Guardian in the sense that he plays Fenrir. He plays all these weird picks in an attempt to creatively carry his team past the point. And I sort of like that, but that's definitely where these teams need to focus on. They need to focus on the support role specifically and then branch out towards the rest of the team. And then as far as Thirst is concerned, quite obviously, it's jungle and mid. Jaco and Wolfie really make that team. Solo's had a number of problems. There basically is no Hunter player. Astro Squared is filling the role at the moment, but just a lot of inexperience as far as they haven't been a team for a number of weeks like these other teams. So you have to focus on the constants when it comes to Thirst, and the two constants are Jaco and Wolfie.
Well, hopping over into Europe, we have a strong lineup to boot. I mean, you've got Team Coast and SK Gaming coming down outside of the SPL. They've been going against Agilitas and Potato Boys, and that is a competition to be known. SK and Team Coast have a long history of being very top performers. We saw Coast come out of the the qualifiers into the Pro League, kicking all kinds of butt, and we saw SK Gaming definitely get a big victory. We see them all throughout the season as well, and so you're going down into the wild cards with Agilitas. I mean, we saw Zindern, who's been playing a little bit for Coast. Coast, of course, Ninja Bobat, one of the staples in the Coast lineup, was moved over into Cloud9, so they actually have to deal with that during the SPL, and now we'll see if they can actually carry it into the wild cards. And you got Potato Boys. So, I mean, all these teams have top-level pros or ex-pros in their lineup.
Yeah, I mean, so Potato Boys is SunTouch's team, a popular streamer, very popular pro player.
Right.
He's played a number of different positions and different times in Smite this time around. He's playing Hunter. So he'll be playing Hunter. He's supported by Durgius, previously of I5, almost made it to the SPL.
Well, I think the only role he hasn't played yet is solo.
Yeah, he's got, next time he quits, he'll be playing solo.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah. So they have to watch out for that duo lane. SunTouch and Durgius are pretty nasty. You have Adapting, you have a number of different players on that roster. Proxy QQ making up the solo lane, previously of SK Gaming. So again, sort of a situation like 5 Angry Men, with ex-pros really making up the roster. And Agilitas, no ex-pros there, but they might as well be Dry Bear. They
look really good.
Extremely talented. Confrey and Pretty Prime specifically. They have a solo mid synergy that almost no other team has, and they're definitely something to watch out for.
Pretty Prime, kind of the hidden gem of the pro scene in Europe. He's been performing incredibly well and knocking a lot of pros out of ranked matches and showing his stuff. And Agilitas, I mean, they went straight through the Challengers Cup as if it was just air.
7 weeks.
That's the whole thing. 7 weeks, first place every single time. Potato Boys as well, second place the entire time, correct? So second place throughout the entire Challengers Cup. These two teams are teams to watch out for. So going into this, you're thinking, can these teams raise it up? And you're looking at, not only do they have to make it through the wild cards, they have to make it through the regional championships, and then they have to make it through Worlds to really show what they can be of. So, just to put money where your mouth is, predictions for EU and NA wildcard completion.
Agilitas is going to be very successful. I have Agilitas as a slot in the EU SPL without a doubt. Personally, I think they're a middle of the pack European SPL team that just aren't in there. As far as whose spot they're going to take, I think that SK is a little bit stronger of a team. I think that SK than Coast. I think SK is secretly wishing that wildcards were a LAN event. SK performs very well at LANs, and as does Coast. They kind of overperformed. I think that's the story of Coast, though. Overperforming. SK, I think, will keep their spot. Potato Boys are strong, but SK has been a tenured team for a long time. That's probably one of their strengths. Sort of going back to old Dignitas. Old Dignitas' strength was that they were just consistent in their player base and they knew the ins and outs. SK Gaming has that same sort of thing. So I definitely expect Agilitas to make it. I'm not counting Potato Boys out, but it's going to be a little bit more of a struggle for them. On the North American side of things, I think we'll see Rambozos have a solid chance. I'm not as confident in Rambozos as I am Agilitas, just because Agilitas is outstanding.
Sure.
Thirst will have a problem. Thirst will definitely have a problem with both of these teams. 5 Angry Men has some individual strength, but as far as the team composition, we'll see how it works out. Basically, at the end of the day, North America, more of a dice roll. Europe, we'll see you Agilitas.
So your two teams for Europe?
Agilitas and SK Gaming.
Okay, and NA?
With NA, Rambozos I'll see Rambozos and Fat Chunks.
Okay.
Done.
For me, I'm gonna agree with EU just because I mean SK. I think it could be SK Agilitas from Europe. They're playing incredibly well. I think those two teams deserve it.
Yes.
And of course, in North America, I'm actually gonna go with. Oh man, it's gonna be Chunks. I think it's absolutely gonna be Chunks. As far as the second place here, I think it's gonna be. You're absolutely right. It's all these teams have an option to vie for this slot.
Right.
Five Angry Men, Rambozos, especially his Thirst. But at this point, I'm actually gonna go ahead and go with Thirst.
I want it to be Thirst, but there's
I think
no
it's
way
going
I
to be
agree.
Thirst. But that's going to be it. We're going to hop into the next thing, which is going to be changes in gods. And we're looking at the patch that just got launched, right? Freya's ultimate range got reduced.
Good.
The area of effect got reduced.
Good.
Same thing for Rom. Rom is actually do less damage with the ultimate. He's up into the air. Apollo had the knock-up duration and the magical protection on his Serenade removed. And on top of that, we're going to see a little bit more of a toss-up here. I mean, the Hunters, right, with Rom and Apollo being knocked down,
Right.
what's the deal there?
I still think they're very, very dominant, Drybear. You're going to have... it was a great change to Apollo. The knockup is now more skill dependent, if you ask me. It's a little bit of a knockup, but instead of getting 2 free hits, you get 1 hit if you're quick enough to make the 180. I love that change. Taking the magical protection off of Mesmerize, the physical protection is still there, but he's more susceptible to Mage Burst, which I think is important for a Hunter. They need to be vulnerable, and I mean, he is supposed to be the escape artist, but Apollo's not very vulnerable. As far as the Rom nerf, it happens. He'll still be extremely high pick because of the rest of his kit. I don't think I like the spot that they're in now. I don't think they're too strong. I think that they'll be interesting and they'll still be top pick, but it might open up the windows a little bit more.
My favorite part about the Hunters is that there's actually a pretty big pool for Hunters. We see Ull, Neath played all the time. Really, the only person you can't play now is like Shibalanki and AMC. Cupid still gets play. We're seeing On Her getting played a lot, and so there's a lot of sub-ins there for Hunter. And so I'm 100% on top of that. I think that Rom's ult being lower, and the issue with it is that it was doing, if you hit all 3 shots, like 1,600 damage. That's kind of not okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of damage. And so the power of Rom is that he was able to sit near the Gold Fury, go up into the air, dunk on Gold Fury while you're doing it, and to protect it the whole time. Apollo, same thing. Now, Apollo, I think the knock-up on the 3 is, it's key to his design, but at the same point, it's also like he's going to knock you up, slow you, and then go away and sprint. Then you catch him again, and he's going to go CC immune and fly. And it's just like, he's very difficult to lock down, which means he's guaranteeing the fight. The same thing goes for him. I mean, he's able to split push constantly. So him being reduced to the magic protections means that he's still going to be able to tank the Gold Fury. He's still going to be able to kind of go for some attacks and close things out and sell that late game prowess. But at the same point, it means that now he can still be bursted by mages and still has less of a knock-up duration, which means it's going to be harder for him to box. But that's going to be it for this face-off, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for following the journey with us. If you're looking for more action, you're going to be going into tomorrow, which will be the North American map control breakdown into the art show. Friday, we have some other juicy things coming down for you, looking into the wild cards. Remember, if you're looking for tournament play, you'll be seeing the wild cards this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, starting at noon Eastern on this channel here, twitch.tv/Smite Game. That's going to be it for us. For everyone here at the studio, all of our moderators and all of our admin and production staff, as well as myself and F. Kelly will be up next. Stick around. We'll see you then.